Good to see you. I want to let you know we are funny. I was
We're
just
funny.
amused by, we
Who's
are. I was
who's
amusing
we?
myself the other day by just listening to our podcast. And what I love about re-listening to our episodes, even though I sat through them, I don't sit them through them nearly as often as many times as Michael does, but I was re-listening to our episode with Dr. David Nathan and talking
Mm-hmm.
about ADHD. And I remember walking away from that episode going, wow, that was really helpful and interesting. And listening back, I heard something again that I think I missed or didn't fully encode
Oh,
the first
please.
time, which I love. So I'm going to advocate for re-listening to these episodes because often you're not going to catch everything the first time through. And one of the things that Dr. Nathan reminded us of with ADHD in particular was not just that some tasks feel really difficult because you're not checking them off the list. They also take a bigger drain on a battery. And I'm reminded of thinking about
Mm.
ADHD as sort of a race car engine, right? It runs hot and fast, but the fuel doesn't last real long. And I just was really appreciative that he reminded us of that. Anyway,
Um,
so
no, that was a good
welcome.
episode.
Welcome to this episode.
Yeah, which
Michael,
is
what
not
has
as far as we know about ADHD, although it may
it,
be. I don't
I
know.
have no idea because
We don't know.
this is absolutely cold for us otherwise. Michael, what do you have for us? What's
Yeah,
going
well,
on
I
here?
mean, I'll go back really quick to what you said. I mean, I imagine being present in the moment, you don't get a chance to process fully what's happening. So listening back probably is useful to you. I kind of have the reverse experience where I am listening to you in the moment, and then as I edit, I pay less and less attention to actually what's being said. So and the
So
editing is very light. Like I don't do a heavy touch
here's
edit like some
This
people
is
do.
true.
So
here's my experience of listening to these podcasts. I often don't remember anything I said, and I'll listen to it and I'll be like, "Damn, that guy's pretty smart." And that gal he works with seems really smart too. But like, I often don't remember. Like, I'll hear the thing and I'm like, "Oh, I wonder what I have to say about this," as if I've never
Sometimes I'm
said
really
it.
pleased. I'm like, oh, good, I did say that.
I do. I go like, oh, that was good.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to. I apologize for tooting my own horn, but I'm often surprised because I don't remember the shit that I say because it's all in the
Think
moment, which is
it
really
just
a
speaks
fascinating
to the
commentary on the way we remember
cold,
stuff.
right? But it also speaks to the cold nature. This is not rehearsed. We're not planning. We don't have talking points or bullet points. We really don't know. So we're just shooting the shit and having a conversation. How often do you shoot shit, have a conversation, and then listen back? You don't.
You
So
don't.
it does speak to the nature of how much we remember and our ability to remember verbatim and all of those things. Anyway, Michael,
yeah.
help us. What rabbit hole are people in
So
right now?
yeah, I mean, just like usual, I've gone out and I found a story for you. And as you guys both have said, I don't share it with you, which I'm not great at keeping secrets. So it's
Oh my
actually
God,
really
you are
hard for
kind of
me
the
to not
worst.
share these things. But it ends up, I like the conversation that comes out of hitting you both cold with it. So
Yeah.
anyway, I've usually gone through and I've tried to de-identify some of the information so it's a little bit more discreet. And and if you don't know if this is your first episode and you're like, oh my God, what is this? You should also know that at the end, we always have like a bonus conversation. So if you hang out past the credits, we have some other conversation. And Dan had said something last week about having an idea. So I guess we'll follow whatever his whimsy is there.
Well, hey there. You've stumbled upon the intersection of internet quandaries and psychological insight. Welcome to Veritas Views on AITA, where the quirks of the internet meet the expertise of Veritas Psychology Partners.
Today's prompt, though, this one is: am I the asshole for telling my 17-year-old that she needs to go to her job and not no call, no show for a third time?
Um,
And there's a twist to it slightly, which
I
is
should hope
Uh,
so,
I,
because
I,
otherwise this is like
I,
a 30-second conversation.
yeah, we're like, no, you're not. None.
Good job parenting.
well,
Yeah,
and I
That was
would
thank
good.
say
you.
like, and part of it I suppose is in parent, and this comes up later and we can talk about it more, but like, how much do you try to manage your child's career and help them with some of those things? Like sometimes
Yeah.
letting them lose a job maybe is a good experience, but in this case, it's actually a volunteer experience,
Well,
which I
let's
think
hear
is
it.
Yeah,
Let's
so
hear it.
this is what we got. My 17-year-old daughter has always been responsible. She excels in school, and we've given her a lot of freedom because of that. She doesn't have chores or a curfew. Our only rule is that she keeps her phone location on when she's out. In our country, which he doesn't specify which, it's legal for her to drink and occasionally go to bars. Recently, we even allowed her to host a house party that was supposed to have 25 guests, but over 100 showed up. Despite the chaos, we cleaned up the mess without much fuss. Since January, she's been volunteering every Sunday for 3 hours to bolster her college applications. However, she's missed 2 sessions, once due to illness and once due to a hangover. Additionally, she's been leaving early every week. This past Sunday, she overslept but still had time to attend. When I insisted she go, she accused me of being controlling, called me derogatory names, and claimed I was gaslighting her, which I know is one of your favorite terms. She even threatened that I'd never see my future grandchildren. My husband and I were taken aback since we've always tried to be lenient given my own experiences with controlling parents. Now I'm questioning whether I was too harsh or if I should have handled things differently,
Oh,
especially given that this is a volunteer position. Am I the asshole?
setting aside the am I the asshole question, I think I just want to say, like, I think it's really important for us not to necessarily overreact to the things that come out of teenagers' mouths. Teenagers, like, they are at one day, they're just like gifted all of the adult emotions, but none of the control over them, and none of the ability to do anything with it. And until one's early 20s, they really don't even have the ability to project themselves into the future and understand consequences of actions fully. So while this 17-year-old probably presents quite a bit like an adult in many ways, her brain is not fully developed.
Mhm.
And I think it's a one of the mistakes I would recommend against is to remember a lot of what she said and take it to heart, because teenagers say shit that, like, when you go back in time, like, you look back and it's like, oh my God. You know, like, I'm 17-year-old me was like the smartest person in the room. And clearly my parents were idiots and didn't know anything at all and didn't understand. And the 17-year-olds are incredibly confident in their knowledge, skills, and abilities and have no fucking idea how much they just don't know and understand yet. My apology to any 17-year-olds who are listening. The teenage brain just hasn't fully developed, including my own at age 17. I'm sorry, Gail, I just took over and rambled there. But what do you have to
You're
say about
not
this?
wrong. I had nothing to add. I sat quietly because you're right. I mean, 17-year-olds really just, I think you said it really well. They've been gifted all of these adult emotions and frankly, I think opinions and none of the adult control over it. So I take no issue. Now, I don't even know in this particular scenario, if we get back to this scenario, that I care so much if it's a paid position or a volunteer position. If you have made a commitment, hopefully this family has taught their child or children the importance of following through with the commitment you made, whether you are getting paid to be there or not. There is a reason that you are doing it, and you have made a commitment to somebody else, and you should honor that. There is a limit to which you can exert control over a 17-year-old. It's not only a 17-year-old's job to pull away and individuate. By the way, that's why they're such assholes, is they're pulling away from us and they're practicing adulting, even if they're kind of sucking at it, because it's practice. It's brand new. But our job is to practice letting them go. My mom said something. I don't know if I've said it on this podcast. I say it a lot because I was probably, I don't know, in my mid to early teens when she said it to me. I really have no fucking clue. I feel like I've heard this in my head from her my entire life. And I say it a lot now. And at the day that I gave birth to my oldest son, I heard it in my head probably louder than I've ever heard it. Parenting is the perpetual process of letting go. And for
Mm.
the 17-year-old, this parent does need to let go a bit more and perhaps let this child fail. Now, I would hope that there has been some intervention earlier of like, okay, you're hungover and you're going to no call, no show. That's kind of not cool. You might want to make some amends. Here's why, but I'm not going to demand that you do it. I'm providing advice and guidance, but rather than a demand.
I it's interesting is I have an experience, a personal life experience, of having hadn't had alcohol at an age that perhaps it wasn't legal in the state that I was in high school, and waking up in the morning, and I worked at the local drugstore, and I woke up in the morning and I said, I don't feel well. I don't think I can go to work today. And my mom said to me, something you ate? And I responded quite honestly, no, something I drank.
Okay.
And my mother of blessed memory said, well, something along the lines of, well, there's a lesson for you.
Mm-hmm.
Go to work.
Yep.
And I went to work and they handed me a mop and asked me to mop the floor. And if you mop a floor in a store, you're swinging back side to side, side to side,
Oh.
side to side. I did not, fortunately, I thought, well, if I throw up, I will have an easy way of cleaning it up. But here I have the mop and the bucket and I'm backing up anyway. It would be super simple just to continue on going. And I did not um, vomit, which was quite good that I didn't know. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But I get it. It was a life lesson for me that I think was
Mm-hmm.
quite valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions were often, and by the way, if any of my kids are listening, I made all that up. It didn't really happen, because I would never have drank anything in high school.
Never.
But like I think about this idea that like what, and this comes up a lot with adults. I only work with adults. You only work with adults, but
Mm-hmm.
where do we let our kids fall down and get hurt?
Mm-hmm.
And where do we step in and try to prevent it? And at what point do we say, okay, like you don't go, it will cause problems with your reputation, and you figure that out on your own. And where do we say, no, let me step in here and give you the wisdom, the benefit of the wisdom of my years? This is a tough one that I don't think has a really clear and easy answer, because I can hear both arguments.
I can absolutely hear both arguments. I think the line is incredibly fuzzy, and what we're lacking is detail in terms of how have you handled it up to this point. I think
Well,
there's
they said like we did it really chill. Like if my kid had a party, you could have 25 people and 100 people were there. I don't know. They'd be like, we cleaned up afterwards and it didn't
No,
really
I don't
punish.
mean that part of it. I mean the previous two instances of this individual not showing up to this volunteer position. Like, what was that conversation with that child,
Hmm.
right? A
Okay.
guiding conversation, a parental sort of hand, arm around the shoulder kind of thing. Like, let me advise you. You've got some choices here. This is what the outcome is going to be versus, your mother, may her memory be a blessing, who says, you know, Danny, you're going. Like,
Yeah.
I think either of those are fair responses. To what extent are we snowplowing the problems in front of our child versus giving them lots of information to make a decision and then letting regret be a teacher?
Right.
Your mom let you experience regret in a different way, which is around the alcohol consumption and not feeling well, or, theoretical, hypothetical
Hypothetically, we'll say,
right, alcohol consumption. And this parent had an opportunity to not be controlling so much as create opportunities for regret to be a teacher. And I think part of the conversation with this teenager that I might have is, okay, you've put in X number of hours at this volunteer position for the purpose of a college application. Being let go or asked not to come back may undermine all of the work that you've already put in, and you're not going to want to put it on that application. This is wasted time now. Do you really want that? Or, you know what I mean? And I might lay out some options for this teenager. And then if you go, yeah, fuck, I'm staying in bed. All right.
yeah. I mean,
This is this
this
is
is,
fine. You can do that. That's not controlling. That is simply giving someone information to make a decision on.
yeah. And one of the things we don't know, and these stories often,
Mhm.
as we often talk about, these stories are recounted by someone who generally is feeling good about themselves and and often wants reassurance.
Mhm.
But this is such a gray area, because as a parent of teenagers and former teenagers, I find myself often like saying, this is what I think you should do. But in the end, like, but some of the times I've said, this is no, you're doing. Some of the times we have said, no, you made this commandment. And other times it's been like, well, you in the end, this is what I think is the right thing. And in the end, it's going to be your choice. And those are, and of course, at different ages, we let go in different ways. And sometimes the different children, the rules are different because their children aren't the same. And some are more capable and responsible. And I this one, I think, kind of for me defies a really clear answer, because I could see arguments made from multiple different answers on this one.
Yes.
I don't know.
And when we think about who's the asshole here, can we just assume the teenager is being an asshole because teenagers are assholes? But that's not a finding of guilt. That's just a finding of stages and ages here. And if we presume that the teenager is being an asshole, then we just sort of forgive the assholeness because it's diagnostic of being 17.
Right. Yeah, no. And no insult to any
Apologies to
17-year-olds.
17-year-olds out there everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, 17-year-old, the decisions of 17-year-old me, I will say very clearly, were not guided by the sort of thoughtful wisdom that accompany later decisions in life. And teenagers, as a group, tend to have hot, strong emotions and say things that you look back on, like, and you're like, oh, wow, that was awful.
Well, and we know too, as parents, the injuries that we experienced as younger people come forward with us, and we don't want to, quote unquote, repeat those mistakes. And so it seems pretty clear to me here that this parent has an injury around feeling over controlled in a family of origin situation. And so they've come with this sort of raw spot around being accused of being controlling. And I'm sort of guessing the 17-year-old knows that and is leveraging it here. And
I hadn't thought
that
about
is
that.
making this parent feel particularly vulnerable in this idea of like, really? Am I being controlled? Like, really? I tried so hard not to be. And I think sometimes our kids know that button and they push it anyway. And I'm
totally.
not. I think that this person sounds like they've really erred on the very other side of it, which is now creating more of a situation where they do have to be maybe a little bit more controlling or a little bit more guiding, and it's coming off as extremely different than how they've been because of that, again, lack of a better word, injury they've carried forward and tried so hard to step around all of these years. Now they're coming with a lot more guidance because you're about to fail in bigger ways, right? We've talked about that on the podcast too, that, sometimes late teenagers get themselves in situations where they can fail really big, and we really can't afford them to fail in such big ways. And so I think that previous injury is really informing how they're handling this child up until now, and now in this particular spot being so sensitive to being called controlling.
And we've certainly talked about this idea that sometimes the parents will get the advice, just let them fail, just kick them out of the house. And I don't understand why they don't just kick that kid out of the house. Sometimes when the kid's a little older, say they're in their 20s, and really, really have gone and they're down a really tough path. And that seems like the right answer so often, but in practice, that could cause them far more harm, and it's not so cut and dried as that. This might be one of those times where it's appropriate for the parent to say, no, you're going. That's it. And are they being controlling? Well, they're telling what to do and telling them they have to do it. Absolutely. But is that wrong? Maybe not. Or this might be one of those situations where the kiddo can just like suffer the consequences of her poor choices in that moment, and potentially give up on that really wonderful opportunity to be able to talk about this thing that she's done to help her college applications. I'm having trouble with anyone being an asshole in this story.
Yeah.
Other than the normal, like, I don't think this teenager is necessarily an asshole above and beyond what is baseline behavior for a teenager. I kind of chuckle, like we both laugh, like I'm not gonna let you see your grandchildren, like, as a result of like you making me go to this volunteer job. Is just like, so
Such a 17-year-old thing to say.
It is. It's the sort of thing that I just want to okay, let me write this down
Mm-hmm.
so I can remind you of it when you're 30 and we can all laugh about
Uh-huh.
A
Right.
hungover 17-year-old thing to say.
it. Exactly.
Right. But
Exactly.
parents genuinely become afraid that this is something that their child is going to die on this hill and this is absolutely going to be true. And they come into us and they are frantic, right? I've upset my child so much. They're threatening to cut me out of their lives, da, 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 da. And they're so close to launching from home. It feels very
Yeah.
real. And you get this very frightened reaction from parents when these kinds of things come up. And it's really hard as a therapist to sit in front of them and say, well, we know for certain this isn't going to happen because we don't. I mean,
We
sometimes
don't. And
17-year-olds and trauma happen and families are split.
yeah.
The likelihood is pretty low.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it sounds like the OP and their child. I don't know OP's gender in this case, but OP and their child. It sounds like they've had a good relationship, like they've been able to talk about things
Yeah.
honestly in the past, and that's one of those indicators of um, um, like you've got a relationship here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the questions I would really have for OP is what's your outside of this incident, what's your relationship with your child like? What problems are they having or not having? It's one of those questions that comes up a lot. Like if your kid has lots of friends and their teachers think they're great and their friends' parents think they're great, but they're kind of being dickish to you, they're probably fine.
Yeah, it's probably just
Teenagers
developmental. Mm-hmm.
tend to express so much anger and frustration and hostility at their parents that it's hard to judge whether or not they're having trouble based on what they do to their parent, what they say to their parents. I tend to base it much more. I'm not a child psychologist at all, but I tend to base my concerns much more on how are they doing in school, how are they doing with their friends, what do people say
Mm-hmm.
about what do their friends, what do their teachers say, what do they, that sort of thing. So I'm not terribly worried about OP, and I'm not terribly worried about OP's daughter in this case.
Yeah.
And I don't know that any of them are assholes.
I don't think either sound like assholes given the fact pattern that we have. I don't even know that anybody sucks here other than the normal baseline sort of suckiness of the slog of parenting sometimes and teenagerhood. Like this is just hard, peeps. And my heart goes out to this family. They've had a kind of a rough weekend.
It's you know what? Here's the reality. It's hard to be a teenager. It
Yeah.
really is. I mean, I talked about being gifted all of these emotions, but you're trying to figure out how to be a grown-up in a world, but you're not. And you want to be able to make your own decisions for your life, but you don't yet make good decisions. So your parents are trying to enforce their rules on you, and you are still a child, but you're not. You're sort of a grown-up. You have some responsibilities that grown-ups have if you have a job and it's a tough time of life. I just want to there's no I don't know if there's any amount of underscoring that can really emphasize how hard it is to be a teenager.
No.
It's hard. Yeah. So
Sure. Michael, what did the internet have to say?
Yeah, we've decided
Well,
that no one's an asshole.
I mean,
other than
you guys are always much more nuanced than the internet.
I mean, it's kind of our job.
It's our job.
That is true. I mean, you really had three camps here, and it was they were all very sure of themselves. So there was the not the
17-year-old.
Yes, there was definitely the not the asshole view, which is, she needs to take responsibility as she grows into adulthood. If she doesn't go, that also has implications she needs to deal with. She needs to figure this out for herself. It's, like whatever, that one kind of like let them fail essentially. Everyone sucks here, which is she shouldn't have called you names. She should live up to her responsibilities. You need to, find a balance of pushing and not pushing and letting them fail. That was kind of the softest approach.
I think the parent did find that balance. They're just struggling with it today.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's you're the asshole, which is like you're dismissing your daughter's feelings and you're trying to be controlling, like let her go. She'll find a balance, whatever kind of thing. The one I would say the one interesting kind of conversation that came out of this that I enjoyed that had small bearing on the actual topic itself, which was, that there was kind of the OP and then in some of the clarifying comments kind of diminished the role that this volunteering had that the daughter was doing. Oh, it's just a volunteer thing. Like, it doesn't really matter.
Mm.
And a number of people said, actually, it almost matters more because no one's being paid to show up and they are counting on volunteers to be there. And if she's made a commitment, like it's just going to stretch the few people that are there all the further. If you lose a job where you are financially paid for it, you're really the one loses out. They'll find somebody else to fill in for you. But in a
Maybe.
volunteering role, like the stakes are greater than just your monetary compensation. And I thought that was kind of interesting conversation,
Mm.
but
I think maybe that's a little bit true, but I'm not sure that I'm fully on board with that. When you commit to show up, whether you're paid or not, follow through on a commitment, please, because even if you're paid to be there, someone has scheduled you on a shift and someone else isn't scheduled to be in. They've counted on the time away, and if we have to backfill that because you didn't show up, that's as problematic as backfilling or trying to stretch the staff available at a volunteer position. I don't know that I fully lean into the explanation. But I do think your word should mean something, and if you said you're going to be there, then go, please.
Mm.
and one of the things, unfortunately, the internet really missed, which I was glad you guys covered, was like finding that way to present the,
Hmm.
these are the outcomes, these are the realities of the choice you're making.
Hmm.
Where the internet was like, no, you need to make her go, or you need to let her fail. It was one or the other. It was not present options, and
Yeah.
like making her think through some of those things, which maybe as a hungover 17-year-old, you're not going to have the best ability to process in the moment. But
Oh, can we take the word hung over out of this conversation? I mean,
Uh,
I had a
I
conversation with our teenager the other day. There was an opportunity that came up, and the response was, "Nah, I'm good." And I went, "Okay, okay. Now think about this. What if you were paid $1,000 to do it?" And the response is, "Well, maybe." Well, let's think about this. While it's a volunteer position in name, you're putting it on a resume or a college application, which you're hoping to receive some financial aid or grant money or scholarship or something. And this is part of that. It does for these young people potentially translate into money. Now, it's not a direct payment for the work, but there is maybe some distal
Ooh.
financial compensation, which was the conversation I had with the child. And he went,
And I have
okay.
to say though, as the person, if you're the person who's going to be paying for said child's education, and they're making a choice that's going to harm the possibility of you getting some portion of their college paid for or
Yep.
covered, now you're no longer a disinterested third party, and that changes the entire fact pattern around this particular case.
Yep.
Now we don't know, presumably if they're they're obviously not in the United States because there's no state in the United States where you can drink when you're 17, and it may not be the same thing as far as like a college, payment of,
Right.
countries. College doesn't cost what it does in the United States. Things like so. We don't know the fact pattern here. Um, but I certainly see that argument. And it's really funny. Flashing back to this, like I could see myself making either decision on this one. I could see
Mhm.
myself being like, "All right, you lose. I mean, it's your problem, your mistake." I could see myself going, "No, you have to go," and I could see myself
Mhm.
presenting like, "I don't know. This one's not. This one just isn't cut and dried."
It is not cut and dry. I totally agree. I think, ideally as a parent here, I'm having some nuanced conversations leading up to this instance. Ideally, we're not at a third go. I mean, I think part of my annoyance, extra annoyance maybe at the teenager and maybe the parent a little bit too, is that we're at the third strike. Why aren't we having this conversation more clearly and focused at strike one and two, right? That we've now waited to hear, and now it feels like crisis level as opposed to, our job as parents, which is to intervene early and present that and advise them and guide them. And maybe OP did, and we just lack that in this particular scenario.
yeah. Well, thank you both again for another riveting debate and a glimpse into the collective conscience of the internet forums. Remember, morality is often shades of gray and not just black and white.
So is parenting, guys. Best of luck to us still parenting children who are home.
For sure. Please follow and share Veritas Views on any of the podcast platforms, with your neighbors and friends. And as always, stick around through the credits for the bonus conversation about, I don't know, whatever happens beyond Dan's mind.
You can follow Dr. Dan Kessler at Dr. Dan Kessler and Dr. Gayle MacBride at Dr. G. MacBride. Oh, and you can find them both at veritaspp.com. Credits. Tickling the Ivories, Matthew Reddington. Art, production, and design, bringing this show together with flair and finesse, Michelle Love. Recording and editing, turning chaos into something worth sharing, Michael MacBride. Intro, outro, I'm Kelly Buttrick, a VO talent who just happens to be Dr. MacBride's cousin. Cats, CJ, Linus, Sadie, and Griffin. Hosting by whomever lost the coin flip. Interruptions by all their children. The content of this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listening to this podcast does not constitute a therapist-client relationship. If you believe you may be experiencing a mental health issue, please seek the assistance of a qualified mental health professional. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, you can call or text 988 from anywhere in the U.S. to be connected to Crisis Mental Health Services.
Thanks for listening. As promised, here's that bonus conversation.
Oh, we link in the show notes to our previous conversation about potlucks that I wanted to ask you about at the end of the thing. So we're going to bring it up now.
Okay.
What's your go-to? For a potluck? Do you have a go-to?
I really don't.
Anything that fell on its face. You brought it and then you went to pick it up when you're leaving and the entire thing is still there.
It's interesting. I mean, you know me, we tend to drink. We tend to eat fairly healthy. And
Right.
I think sometimes what I think is delicious and nutritious and whatever, I will take it to, it's usually the night to unite, the national night out. We do a
Mhm.
potluck for the neighborhood. And that food often gets a little less love than
Less-
the other potlucks. I've done things like, I think we've done the Chef Dan salad, which I think we've talked about on the potluck
yeah,
before, which
yeah.
is sort of bean and vegetables and that kind of stuff. And that doesn't get as much love as the, gajillion pizzas that our realtor friend who hosts the whole thing, she'll bring in a gajillion pizzas, and that usually gets hit pretty hard. And our neighbor across the way always cuts up a watermelon, and that always goes really, really well. But yeah, so like something I will bring sometimes will be just look a little too healthy, and it will get left behind.
I will say, like, as a person who follows a mostly vegan diet, I like my taste buds, I think, have been ruined, and I'm always afraid that I'm going to bring something that I think is absolutely delicious, and it's going to
I will say I have a vegan queso dip that even non-vegans are like, oh, can I?
You
get the
say
recipe
that,
for
and they're
that?
just
Yeah, no. They're
I've
like,
had it.
oh my gosh, this is vegan and it's really good. Can I have the recipe? I've had more than one person go, I want this recipe for this vegan queso. So there you
All
go.
right, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I was curious what your go-to was, but apparently
I
not.
don't. I whatever is. I like to
Whatever
make
floats
something
your boat.
interesting.
All right.
And maybe that's my problem is I bring something that I think is interesting and people are like, what the fuck is this? This is something
Maybe
that's highly
if
recognizable.
listeners, let us know what your go-to is.
Ooh,
I'm curious.
yep.
Do you have a specific go-to, or are you like Gayle who just brings what the spirit moves?
Whatever the fuck is on my mind, or do you bring Oreos and milk?
There you go. Ooh.
Yeah, hit
Again.
our mailbag. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
For sure. Thanks for tuning in. Tune in next week for a whole nother Am I the Asshole debate.
We love hearing from you, so please review us on Apple, Spotify, or, well, wherever you're listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please review, like, and follow. Also, give it a share. This helps us reach more listeners.